The original title of this Norwegian Netflix movie translates to In Bad Times, which is probably a more fitting title, but I don't think it conveys a sexy enough title. So The Trip is the title that we get for this extremely dark comedy. Eager to end their marriage by murdering each other, a husband and wife head to a remote cabin, but soon find themselves facing an even bigger threat. Noomi Rapace and Aksel Hennie star as Lisa and Lars, respectively. When we meet them, they don't get along, and they're pretty nasty to each other. Just about every interaction is biting and mean. They're heading to Lars's family cabin, and unbeknownst to each other, they each plan on offing the other while on the trip. And while this is dark enough, a complication then arises that creates even more danger for the couple. So portions of this movie will feel a little like The War of the Roses, or maybe Mr. and Mrs. Smith, but it also has some situations that feel like they were influenced by the recent Kevin James dark comedy, Becky. This movie is a violent and bloody comedy. The laughs are more spurts than gutbusters. Certain lines and situations came on unexpectedly, which caused short outbursts of snorts and laughs from me. At first, while watching and understanding what the couple planned to do to each other, I thought, why wouldn't they just leave the other? I mean, that makes more sense, right? But then the motivations became clear, explaining why each would go through the trouble of disposing of that other. So like I said, this is violent and bloody. I mean, it was certainly unexpected at the level of violence that ensues through the course of the story. And really, the narrative doesn't waste much time before diving right into the action. There are some sequences where we get a tiny bit of background on the situation, but then the movie dives headlong right into the crux of the conflict. I like how the storytelling is executed, as we'll watch a scene and then flash back a few days or hours to fill in the details of how the current situation arose. And there are large titles that appear on the screen, so we're never lost where we are in the timeline. The action is captured really well in this, with the choreography done well too. And because a lot of what happens occurs within the cabin that the couple is at, there's a lot of close quarters fight sequences where anything and everything can be used as a weapon. And this makes for a very fun and exciting chain of events that more often than not leave somebody very bloody. Now, we do have to suspend some belief when it comes to the injuries, because I think there's more than a few times where somebody realistically just shouldn't have survived what they endured. But that was the fun of this. There was a ridiculousness to what was going on, even though it still sat within the realm of plausibility. And that suspension of belief also helps to allow the narrative to move forward through some plot conveniences, which I didn't find to ruin any part of the story. The movie is just shy of 2 hours, and I didn't feel the time at all. I was actually shocked that it was that long because everything flew by with a sense of urgency and excitement. Now, I didn't feel a rush of the storytelling though, just that the events were adrenaline-fueled and therefore made this have a charging momentum to it. Now, the story progression is fairly obvious, especially as we get towards the final climax, but there still is a sense of doubt for some of the events because we have to remember the initial impetus for the couple coming to the cabin. And that's one of the twisted story arcs that is present throughout. The couple starts off wanting to kill each other, so anything that happens for the characters really means that they're only looking out for themselves. That tension can be palpable at times and lends itself to anxious situations with some rewarding payoffs. The actors do a great job of crafting some very despicable characters who then still manage at points to be sympathetic. Now, I do think it's easier to root for Lisa than Lars though, just because we hear so much more vehemence coming from Lars. I like that the story allows for some scenes of very awkward silence between the couple. Now, one may speak while the other ignores, and it's painful to watch, especially given a lot of the circumstances. I was talking at the TV for the characters to hear me because they were both being thick-necked at points, which wasn't helping their situation in the slightest. But there are also other times where it feels like I wouldn't be terribly upset if both of them were to cease to be. That didn't happen often, but they could both be so cruel to each other that I figured it would end all of our misery. So overall, The Trip is a bloody and violent dark comedy that fully embraces the darkness and vileness of human nature. The rapport between the two leads, while painful and uncomfortable, was stunning and engaging. They fed off each other in ways that were very credible, creating characters and situations that captured my attention the entire time. While the tone is biting and even sad, the way this is executed lends itself to a few feel-good moments and also a good believability of the two self-involved characters. The action sequences are choreographed to place us right in the middle of the action, creating some great thrills. And even though we need to suspend some belief regarding survivability, the situations aren't so ludicrous that they become unbelievable. I had a lot of fun with this, even though it's horribly dark. There's no sex or nudity, but a ton of profanity and gory violence. I give The Trip 4.5 out of 5 couches. What's the worst vacation you've ever been on? Let me know what made it so bad in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.